In today's episode, I am chatting with the lovely Hayley. Hayley is a mum of 3 beautiful children and 1 angel baby. And what she takes us through today is how, with each one of her 4 pregnancies and birth, she learned more and more. So when Hayley first became a mum during her teen years, she was very uninformed and at the time didn't have a lot of resources or a lot of information available to her. So she had to rely on family members' opinions and also lived experiences, which, as she describes, sometimes didn't sell birth to her. From that experience, she then went on to seeking more information to feel empowered and to feel like she's in charge of her pregnancy and her birth. And this led her down a different pathway for her second pregnancy and her second birth. During her first and second birth, Hayley takes us through the fears that she experienced that something bad would happen to either herself or her baby. And then she takes us through how spirituality really helped her to prepare differently for her home birth for her third child, and how she was able to release fear and therefore embrace the birthing process more and not be scared of it, and really embrace the physiology of the body and also the process that birthing is. And finally, Hayley takes us through her 4th pregnancy with her 4th child, Rylee, who unfortunately passed away at 20 weeks. And this is a very important story to share, I think, because for anyone who may be in this situation of having lost a child, or who may know someone who is navigating through this, Hayley really takes us through how it all went down, how she felt mentally, and also what she wished people had done around her, and how for herself she wanted the birth of Rylee to be celebrated and to be a positive thing, not a grieving process. And once again, I would like to thank Hayley for sharing her story without any taboo, and for being really raw and honest in this episode. I think it will help to raise awareness about second trimester loss and stillbirth. If you are listening to this episode and you may not be ready just now to listen to Rylee's birth story, then I will put the timestamp in the show notes so you can listen up until the point that you feel comfortable. But it is a very powerful and a very important story to listen to. And again, thank you, Hayley, for sharing it with us. You are listening to Cuppa with a Doula. I'm your host, Alicia, exercise physiologist and doula. And every week I chat with a mum or mum-to-be about all things pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. The stories you will hear in this podcast are real and sometimes raw, but they are all told without any taboo. So grab yourself a cuppa, put your earphones in, and enjoy this episode. Hi, Hayley. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. So, I guess let's start by introducing yourself. So, telling the listeners your name, where you're living, and who is in your family.
So, my name is Hayley. I'm from Western Australia. I'm from a very small town called Waroona, and I have 3 living children and 1 little angel.
Oh, yeah, and we'll get into each of your children's birth story. So living rural, that's does that make it a bit complicated in terms of access to maternity, healthcare, all of that?
Yeah, it does. We are part of the metropolitan area, so we are kind of considered no man's land when it comes to things like midwifery programs. No one seems to want to come out here.
Uh, have you got any private midwives that service your area?
We do. There's a lot more now than there was, nearly 3 years ago when I had my home birth. I need to get someone from Bustleton, which was about 1.5 hours away, a private midwife, because I
Wow.
fell out of the border, I think.
Wow. I mean, if you
Yeah,
have
so
a
we're a little bit
fast
on our
birth, that's,
yeah, then you're on your own.
yeah, exactly. You just do it on your own. Wow. Yeah, only reason why I'm asking is because I've done other episodes with people that were living rural, um, and well, access to a hospital is usually there's one. So if you don't really want to go there, you kind of have to. And private midwives are either non-existent or they've got to come, just like you said, they've got to come from quite a distance, like 2 hours plus even. So wow, Australia
Yeah,
is so big and it's maybe a bit too big sometimes.
yeah, definitely.
Um, so before we dive into your four children's birth story, let's take a really big step back and let's talk about whether you always wanted to be a mum. Was that always something that was on the cards for you?
Oh, always. I always knew that I wanted to have kids, always wanted to be a mom. It was never, it was never a doubt in my mind that I would not have kids.
Did you always want to have a big family, or maybe you just wanted at least one and then kind of see how it went? I guess.
I'm one of four, so
Uh huh.
I always did want, at least two kids.
Yeah.
Um, but life doesn't always go as planned. Um, so yeah, I ended up having four, which the more the merrier, but it is full on.
Yeah, because your kids. How old are your kids now?
So my eldest daughter, she's actually from a previous relationship. She's 13, and so I had her when I was 19. And then 7 years later, I have a husband now. I had my 6-year-old, and then my 2.5-year-old, and then last year I had my little angel baby.
No. Wow, that is quite a gap. And as you said, you had your first daughter really young. So usually my next question is, was that pregnancy planned? Which it wasn't. So I guess how did you find out that you were pregnant in the first place?
They were like clockwork to the day, 28-day cycle. It came on time every time. So when it didn't
Hmm.
come,
Hmm.
I we weren't really being, responsible. So you just know when you're pregnant, I
No.
think. And so I had the biggest feeling. And so yeah, a few days after I missed my period, that's when I decided to take a test. And it was so long ago, but I just remember being like shaking, like so nervous. And yeah,
Mm.
straight away there was two dark lines. Undeniable.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, at least you're not guessing. How was that in terms of where you were at in your life with your partner at the time? How, I guess, how did that fit in with your life back then?
So basically, my partner at the time, he's 5 years older than me, and we were both very still immature, baby myself. um, and so I lived in Mandurah and I was going to Perth. We weren't very stable, shall I say, but when I told him, hey, I'm pregnant, he was really happy. So
Mhm.
yeah, we made it work. And being pregnant at 19, it was such a hard thing because just sort of being able to start living life, going to say nightclubs if you're into it, um, with your girlfriends, and you get that next level of freedom that you don't have, say, when you're 17,
Mm.
except to be becoming a mum.
Mhm.
So
Mhm. Yep.
all my friends, going off, doing all the things that that you would expect to do at 18, 19. And then I was having to just slow down, get used to the idea of having and growing a baby, all the different changes in my body, in which I was quite relaxed about. I think because we were so busy. My partner at the time, he did the rodeo circuit, following the rodeos around, and I didn't have my first ultrasound until 15 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
my dates I was pretty certain of because my periods were like clockwork. So at 15 weeks, I remember going in there, having the ultrasound, and just feeling so in love with this little tiny human. Scan came along, and I remember I just really wanted a girl. I was hoping it would be a little girl, and so when the sonographer said, "Oh, it's a girl," I was like, "Woohoo!" So excited. And so we started preparing. My mum was so excited. It was the first grandbaby in the family, and we went shopping. So yeah, we we're buying all the things, and then I had to have another scan actually. So they thought she was maybe a little bit smaller than she
Mm-hmm.
should be. So they suspected IUGR, but
Yeah.
everything came
Intrauterine
back
growth restriction.
normal. Everything came back normal. So I was like, oh, she's probably just
Mm-hmm.
going to be a smaller baby. So I was like, yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't really overthink these things. I think because I was so young and, not really aware. It's a different time back then in 2009 where,
Mm-hmm.
you didn't have readily available information all the time. So, carried
Absolutely.
on. Pregnancy was really good. Just had a bit of morning sickness at the start, and I used to feel like I'd faint. I felt like really faint. I had to sit down a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, But towards the end, yeah, I remember being so scared to give birth. I was so nervous. Um, I think we went to one birthing class, and I just wanted to bury my head in the sand, basically. So basically, if I could have the stork deliver my baby, I would have. I was that
Mm-hmm.
scared.
I see. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
Good
it
idea.
didn't help. It didn't help that my mum would say, "Oh, it's very painful, Hayley. Contractions hurt," and so. Um, wasn't all that, no one really sold birth to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I ended up going to 40 weeks with her, and I think subconsciously I held her in because I was scared to give birth. So the doctor suggested a induction, which I didn't know too much about. I just thought, okay, I guess I'll get induced. And so at 41 plus 3, they induced me with the gel. And
Mm-hmm.
straight away I had niggles, and I thought, this is so painful. And I was 1 centimeter dilated. And I'm like, this is so
Wow.
painful. Um, so I had my best friend there. She was just chatting with me, and I was in the bathtub at the hospital, and just reading through them. But um, it wasn't until the next morning that they said they would break my waters.
Mm-hmm.
So the obstetrician came in the next day, broke my waters, and it was all on. I did not need the drip. I had heard that is way more intense, so I was glad about that. But
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm.
yeah, I had my waters broken, and instantly the contractions started, and I just wanted to run. I did not want to go through that, but obviously it's happening.
Mm.
Don't get a choice. I had my mum as my support. My my partner at the time, he wasn't very supportive. He had stayed up all night
Mm-hmm.
before the induction with his mates, and he was asleep on the couch. So it was me, my mum, my best
Okay.
friend, and the midwife. She was absolutely lovely too. So I remember biting my tongue at one stage and just like yelling at her, like, this really hurts. I tend to labour a lot, and so they were giving me heaps of back massage, but nothing really was working. But in my birth plan, I had it in my head that I did not want an epidural. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd had pethidine, which made me feel really drunk. It just takes the edge off the pain for anyone that hasn't had
Right.
pethidine. Um, So I sort of just felt really out of it. And I didn't want an epidural because my mum had 4 natural births, and it's sort of seen as if you have an epidural, you're weak, you haven't really done labour. So
Mm.
it was my own
Yeah.
personal hang up. which I took
Mm.
on, and really struggled through that birthing process. And I just remember it's almost like I had this out of body experience because I always was like I was watching myself in the bed, watching myself give birth.
Mhm.
But then all of a sudden I
Mhm.
come back into my body and there's all these like surgeons in scrubs in the room, and I just like I need to push. I need to push. And they're like, oh, she needs to push.
Mhm.
And they check me, they do an internal and they say, oh, you 10 centimeters, push. So I start trying to push, and the obstetrician's in there, and he's got the vacuum on her head. So with each push,
Mhm.
I am, he's drawing her out as well. And I just remember the ring of fire, the burn as she started to crown.
Oh,
But
yeah.
then something
Mhm.
inside me, I just dug even deeper, and I just remembered just push through, just push through this moment. It's not going to last. And then once her head was out, um, there wasn't really any more pain. And then next contraction, her body just slid out, and it was all over. Thank
Mhm.
God. Finally over. So that was 18 hours that later.
Wow. I mean,
So
I think, I'm pretty sure that's average for first time mom. Like, I think the average is about that 15 to 20 hour mark. I might be off. I haven't actually double checked that, but from memory, I think that is. So, I mean, 18 is pretty average. But gosh, that's a
yeah,
long time all the same.
you haven't really educated yourself about what you're about to go through. So yeah, 18. They
Yeah,
always
but I
say the
mean, as you
longest, the
said,
first
it's
one is the longest.
yes, that's right. They do say the first one is the longest. That is correct. Yeah.
But yeah, so then I was very traumatized after giving birth. I felt like I just, I definitely wanted more kids, but at the same time, I really didn't want to go through a birth, all the pain
Mm.
again
Mhm.
that I had with my daughter. And I didn't have any tearing or anything, luckily. Um,
Oh, good.
and yeah, so it came to the 8-week check, and then that's when they realised there was something with her vision. So
Mhm.
fast
Okay.
forward down the track, at 8 months old, she was legally blind,
Right.
which it didn't really sink in again because I was so young and she was still a baby, so she was just doing
Mhm.
what babies do. It didn't really sink in that she was blind and was going to need help until she started school, and that's when it was revealed through an MRI of her brain and her spine that she had a condition called septo-optic dysplasia, which affects the eyes, the
Mhm.
brain, and the pituitary glands. So she needs, say, growth
Mhm.
hormone injections, hydrocortisone, and thyroid medication. So that
Wow.
was, yeah, that was not on any ultrasounds either. And I actually don't think it can be.
No, I was going to say I don't think they can because they with ultrasound, the way an ultrasound works, I don't think they can check the eyes, let alone checking if if obviously baby can see, because I mean at some point babies open their eyes in the womb, but they probably could have checked for neural defect, and or anything related to brain malformations, I guess. But it obviously flew under the radar for your daughter. So what were some signs, I guess, as a baby that she couldn't see? Was it she? Um, I guess she was bumping into like objects or like walls.
8-week check, when they shined the torch in their eyes, he noted that
Ah, yeah. Mhm.
her red reflex wasn't responding as well as he would have liked.
Mhm.
So um,
Mhm.
we then got referred to, an ophthalmologist at, it was back then, it was PMH, PCH now, at Children's Hospital. And that's when they did like a ultrasound to see what was going on, which then they saw like something like a stalk, blood vessels going to the back of the eye. So they had to make sure it wasn't all, cancer or anything like that.
Mhm.
So what they did was is they put her under anaesthetic and they went right in and good look at the eyes, if they could see what was going on and if it could be corrected. Because they did suspect cataracts, which is, again, interesting for
Okay.
a young baby to have. But
Yeah,
what they
very.
found was scarring from the front to the back of the eye, as well as the retina did not fully form, and the optic nerves are
Mm-hmm.
smaller than they should be. So basically, even if they
Mm-hmm.
take that scarring out, it was going, there's no point. The still wouldn't be able to get into a that wasn't fully formed to get
Mm-hmm.
the picture. And then the optic nerves were smaller than usual, so the signals to the brain and whatnot. And after that, he
Wow.
said to me, he said, basically go home and just love her as she is, because she's not going to have any vision. And it really sink in. I just thought, okay. And then went home, and once we sort of knew a little bit about that, you could tell that, she wasn't in photos. It would be almost like a marble in her eye, like the
Mm-hmm.
glare.
Yeah.
It wasn't like when you take, a
Mm-hmm.
photo of a child with, good vision, very different. So, and she wouldn't respond to the little play gems that you have with the toys hanging down. She couldn't see them, so she wouldn't.
Yeah. Okay.
With, lots of therapy, physio, speech, all of those different types of
Mm.
things. She's as independent as she can be to this day, and she's tracking along really well.
Nice, nice. Does she was her condition genetic, or was it just a, I guess, random occurrence of it?
We did have genetic testing done, and it was found that it wasn't genetic. It was completely sporadic. So yes, random, just
Oh
random.
wow, that happens, I guess. But well, it's good that you've done everything for your daughter, so she, as you said, she's as independent as she can be, and that's all you can do. And now she's surrounded by all her siblings, and that's probably that's probably a lot. Wow,
Yeah.
so interesting.
So then, fast forward, 7 years later, when I'm pregnant with my first son, I had
Hmm.
that fear, you know, well, can I grow a healthy baby? Will he have,
Hmm.
will this next baby have something wrong with his eyes or something? So I was a bit
Hmm.
fearful
Hmm.
about that, but, we decided to go for it. We could see straight away. Good, because my husband, he does fly in, fly out. So he's
Hmm.
away,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
for months. So luckily we got it the first time, and my body sort of followed the same pattern. Morning sickness till 17 weeks. We were so excited to find out the
Hmm.
gender, so we did a gender scan and found out it was boy, and I didn't have any preference, so that was all very
Hmm.
exciting.
Good.
And it was my husband's, first child of his own, so he didn't have any preference either. So it's just all really exciting. And I remember just really wanting to have a healthy baby. So I did everything I could. I ate really well, and I made sure I was, putting on enough weight because with my first daughter,
Hmm.
everyone used to comment, "You're so small and you're so skinny," and it kind of gave me a complex. I
Yeah, and
sort
see
of
that's really sorry, I just want to interrupt for a second. What's really interesting is in your first birth, so as you said, there wasn't a lot of information that was easily accessible to you because things like Instagram, Facebook groups, online birth classes, they're not a thing in 2009, right? So you're relying on your immediate families, feedback, like their birth stories, all of that, which, as you said, it didn't sell birth to you. It was more, if anything, it sounded more scary than pleasant. Um, and then, yeah, you get those comments like, oh, you're so small, is the baby healthy? And we know that a woman's belly size has nothing to do with the health of their baby. A baby will grow however much they grow, and they will take as much room as they need. And it just because you I guess, look small doesn't mean baby is unhealthy in any ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, because I wasn't educated, I took it on and it became an insecurity. So I ate for, a small village. But I did find I was hungrier with my boy. I was so hungry. So his pregnancy was absolutely textbook, and everything was tracking along when it should be. So it was a massive confidence boost for me.
Mhm.
And the only reason I felt like I could have another baby is if I could have the epidural. So that was my birth
Mhm.
plan straight
Mhm.
away. It was okay, as soon as I'm in labour, let's get the epidural, and that's it. That's all I want this time.
Yep. Good.
Which I also didn't tell my mum about because I didn't want, any comments. So I kept it to myself.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what I did. But I took it a stretch and sweep done when my cervix wasn't totally favourable, which in hindsight, which I didn't get because it wasn't favourable. It was done for the wrong reasons, and those reasons were because my
Mhm.
husband was fly in fly out. He had a limited amount of leave, which you don't know when your baby's going
That's
to be
right.
born. You're going to be home for 3 weeks, with Bub afterwards. So that was a massive factor. So I decided to get the stretch and sweep, and all it did was irritate my cervix for days. And so I had contractions that were going nowhere. I wasn't progressing, they weren't progressing to anything, but
No.
they were so painful. I hadn't really unpacked the trauma from my first birth. So I hadn't learned how to really breathe properly. And because my birth plan was going to labour, go get the epidural, I couldn't do that, you know, this early on in the labour. So I had to really push through. And I remember it got so
That's
painful
right.
at one point that I ended up going into the maternity ward, and they gave me some pethidine, and again just took the edge off. And I thought, oh, they might induce me, and then that way, I can get the epidural and we can just have Bub already because I'm so tired. I'm so tired of days of
Mhm.
nowhere, not progressing. And the obstetrician said to me, "We're not going to induce you, but I reckon you'll be back tonight and you'll have baby. So go home, get some rest, and I'll see you tonight." And of course, it's hard to get rest when you're having all these, contractions which are going nowhere
Mhm.
and they're
That's
constant.
right.
They're not even, you're not progressing still, but they fully ramped up that night.
Mm.
And so I remember the drive to the hospital was very painful. I've always been uncomfortable in the car when
Mm.
I'm in labour, so that wasn't fun.
Mhm.
And it seemed every time I would go there, my contractions would stop. Then I'd just get sent home. So when they ramped up again, I went there and
Oh
um,
no.
I had a massive, what felt like at the time, a massive contraction, and they checked me. They send you home if you're less than 4 centimeters. And I was 4 centimeters. I was like, oh, thank goodness. I can stay. I can get my girl. So, so by then, I said
That
straight
is so funny. You're like, I've hit the target. I am 4 centimeters. I am not going anywhere now.
absolutely, I was not leaving that hospital. I was staying.
Good.
So, um, I requested straight away. I would like the epidural, and yeah, it wasn't too long. The nurse just came in, popped it in my back. I did not look. It didn't feel that
Good.
painful, to be honest, for me. And it worked on one side to start, which I thought, well, you know what? If I get stuck like this, at least it's not the full stretch. So I'm okay with the little button that you press to put more and more in. So, and then I wiggled around a bit, and then I couldn't feel anything after that. So they said to my husband, yeah, sleep and chill out. Basically, chill out and wait till your baby's, basically crowning, and that's it. So
Okay.
I know, so different. Time in the world to think then. So then, of course, naturally, my thoughts go straight to my worst fears, which was um, me either dying in
Mm.
childbirth or my baby dying. So I was low-key panicking about that on the inside, told nobody. Um, and then they just kind of had a look. And they're like, oh, yeah, he's ready, he's coming. Let's get you start pushing. So I pushed him out. Um, and I remember I didn't want to look at him straight away until I heard him cry because I was worried something was either going to happen to him or me. And thankfully, he came out and he cried, and I was fine. And yeah, and he was fully happy, healthy baby. And for me, I thought that was a good experience compared to the first labor.
Yeah. Well, at least you got pain relief, and also your birth went how you wanted. You got to the hospital, they kept you, you got the epidural, and that was it. So yes, that changes a birth completely.
Absolutely. It was, yeah. So then with my third, it was they're 4 years apart all up. So he actually took a while to come through.
Sorry, can we take a step back? Can we go back to so your fear around, like, birth and death? Is there any, maybe it's not very related to this podcast, but do you know why you have that? Is there any particular event or anything that happened to you that led you to have those fears?
I think hearing of stories in the news, hearing of, just different stories. And as a kid, I always worried that my mum was going to die, or fear of death is like leaving what I have
Yeah.
behind. There's so much to unpack there. It's not just, I can't pinpoint that it being any one thing happening.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure it's more than common to have fear around death, and as you said, the fear of losing a parent is extremely common. I want to say, really. So yes, I thought I'd just ask in case there was a specific event, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, I mean, I still feel that way to this day. I'm still worried about leaving my kids behind or things like that. So I think it's just something that's always kind of more sensitive, sort of got that personality to be prone to that type of fear as well, I think.
Yeah, and I think, as you said, you're hitting it on the head. When you're a mom, I think there is that fear of, what if I die now, and then therefore my children are, maybe obviously you've got your husband, and it's like, what happens to my children now? Like, if their mom dies, what happens? I think that's quite common when you become a mom, to have that fear.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even just being able to say that that fear is very real, valid, and exists, and I'm not the only one. There's lots of mums out there that feel that way.
Exactly.
It's very normal to feel
hmm
like that because it's
Yeah.
not just you in this life anymore. You have these little people that need you and you care for.
Yeah, and any fears that we have as humans, as parents, as mom, as dads, are valid, regardless of whether we think we're the only one that has it or they're common. They're valid, and that's how you feel, and that's how it is.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this,
So I guess, fast forwarding to your third birth, did you plan to conceive your third one?
yes, we did. So we definitely knew we wanted, three, at least two together. Again, my daughter was from a previous relationship. So we definitely knew we wanted another. This baby, when we first started trying, he didn't come through straight away. He actually took 14 months to come through. So
Oh,
very different
wow,
from the
that's over a
first.
year. Oh,
Yeah, and it
wow.
did get exhausting.
That's interesting, right? Yeah, and that's very interesting when your first one wasn't planned. Your second one was planned and happened really quickly. And then your third one is not coming for more than a year. Wow. Just the human body, and as you said, your husband being flying fly out, is obviously, you have to time it so well, and ovulation is a very small windows of about, what, like 5 days, not even.
Yeah.
If you're not there, you're not there.
Yeah, I was taking clear blue ovulation tests, and that would say, "Yep, you're ovulating," and
Mm-hmm.
we still didn't conceive. So yeah,
Oh.
so he took a while.
Do you know, I think I read a stat like a long time ago now. And I was reading that stat, and it was saying the statistics of falling pregnant, like even when you know you're ovulating, like you said, doing the ovulation test, I think it's about 14%, like 1/4, 14%.
Yeah,
Even in two healthy human beings, 14%, I think it was, which is extremely low. You know,
yeah,
and it obviously takes, and we also know that even with assisted reproduction, just because you've controlled ovulation, you've controlled the quality of the egg, the sperm, you've potentially induced the ovulation, it still, you don't always succeed on the first go. So I mean, the human body is just intricate, and only a pregnancy, there's obviously a lot more factors that we can't control as humans that need to happen so that you fall pregnant.
yeah. That's why I'm really quite a spiritual person. So I totally believe in divine timing, and I just know that he was on his own timeline, not my timeline. Um, so
Mhm.
I did end up
Mhm. That's right, that's a point, yeah.
I did end up reaching out to a psychic. I asked her the question, when am I going to fall pregnant? And she said to me that stress was a bit of a factor, and I wouldn't fall pregnant until I think it's like the 6th to the 8th month. And I'd have to look back through again. I can't remember what
Mhm.
month this was, but I ended up falling pregnant with him in August, so the 8th month. So that's when I found out I was pregnant. So yeah, I was like, oh, feeling that I was pregnant. Yeah, it's interesting though. Before I had both boys, I had seen a psychic, and they said to me, "You've got two boys waiting for you. One's doing a number, like one's." And that sounded a bit weird. Then
Mhm.
one's doing a number two. One is tracing with their finger like a number two, and the other one is doing like a little love heart with their hands. And she said, "Look, I don't know if it means two
Okay.
weeks, 2 months, 2 years, who knows? But there's two boys, little boy souls waiting for you." So I was like,
Mhm.
okay, totally forgot about that. So then I had my first son, and that was 2 years later. So that was 2014 that I had that reading, and 2016 is when I had my first son. So then, when I was,
That's
when I
insane.
was
Wow.
the second son, second baby, no, sorry, third baby, um, I just thought it's got to be that next little boy. It's got to be that second boy. So when we did
Mhm.
our gender reveal, I thought we popped the balloon, and I said I'd be so surprised if it comes out a girl. And lo and behold, he was a little boy.
Mhm.
Thinking, oh, those are those two little spirit babies from 2014 standing there. And again, that
Wow, that's
pregnancy, I
amazing.
know it is, it's incredible. And yeah, so that his pregnancy was really, really aligning and very spiritual for me. So I tried to unpack a lot of my fears around childbirth, the pain, um,
Mhm.
the
Good.
fears of dying. Um, I read Jane Hardwick Collins' Ten Notes book. I love that. Ina May Gaskin, because I planned to have a home birth, and I wanted a home water
Mhm.
birth. And it seemed along the path when I needed to meet a certain person, they would just appear. And so, yeah, that's what I mean by it was very aligned and
Mhm.
so connected
Nice.
to him. And then I went through naturalist midwifery. I had a beautiful midwife that was, again, 1.5 hours away. And I did so much meditation, just trying to really go within and actually watching birth. So
Mhm.
just really confronting all the fears instead of sticking my head in the sand.
Mhm.
So much more natural. And one thing I really wanted to say manifest was I just really wanted to go on my own, and everything progress. So no induction, no intervention, everything progressed well, and just not have any intervention, I guess. So I did actually go into labour
Yep.
on my due date, the night that I was due. Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
So that was really nice noticing how my body actually was preparing in the weeks leading up. I would get just some really mild, say Braxton Hicks or even they'd just be really mild. But it was like that's how my body actually would naturally prepare. Um, had I not had, induction
Hmm.
for the first one, or a stretch and sweep for the second one. So um, that was really nice. Things just progressed really well. I remember using a comb, not any particular kind you can get the combs these days, and um, they're usually wooden. This was literally just something you would buy from Coles. It was actually my mum's, and
Yeah,
I
I see.
thought, I'll just keep this. I'll give it to you after. I've got plans for your comb. And I
Hmm.
found that really helped because I found when I labour, I want to just make a fist. I want to squeeze that tension. But it was a reminder every time I'd squeeze the bristles on the comb would not only go onto those acupoints on my hands and help my uterus to contract well, it would remind me to put my hands back up. So I found it so useful. And
That's right.
so when I was in the early labour stages, I was just sitting on my birth ball, and I made out with my husband because what gets the baby in gets the baby out, all those beautiful love hormones.
Hmm.
It was a little bit,
Yeah, very good saying. I love it.
I was like, just go with it, just go with it. And I actually had a song. There was the start of the song I just start to Slow Dancing in a Burning Room by John Mayer. And I just kept replaying that because it gave me those real love
Hmm.
feeling, and which obviously helped me help my cervix open, as well as another really beautiful meditation, which just, yeah, it got me right in the zone. So I laboured for most of that on my own, and then it wasn't until the kids started waking and my husband was needed by the kids that I said, okay, call my midwife, and she came. And because I do labour a lot in my back, she had this maneuver where you would push right on an acupressure point in the sacrum, I think it is, in the way lower back. And if you push right on that with, enough weight, it
Yeah.
actually alleviated the whole back labour for me. So I didn't have any pain in my back when she would do that. Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
That's
So,
insane.
don't worry about rubbing the back. Push on it. So with each contraction,
I see. Noted.
yes, contraction, she would do that, and I felt like it was so amazing. And I used my voice really low, deep tones, and um, I just let it out. I just would open up my hands and just really like, oh, rather than trying to scream around later. I got in the
Mm.
birthing pool, and it was really relaxing, but I kind of felt like he should have I felt like I'd be at pushing stage by now. And I think at that point I might have been in transition, either getting scared or you feel like can't do
Yeah.
it anymore. It's not happening. But so in hindsight, I think that was transition for me. And I wasn't going to have any internal checks, but I just really just wanted to see, have I done all this work to be maybe 4 centimeters? So and
Yeah.
she said to me, "You're 10 centimeters." So I was like, "Yay, I'm 10." It's just a tiny
Yay.
little like bit of cervix that is just still on his head. Um, we should go for a walk. See if we can ramp stuff up more. So she said, "Go to the toilet and we'll just see how you go." I did not get that far, and I was like, "I need to go back to the pool. Like these are so intense now." And so I got back in the pool, and she would be pushing my back through each contraction. And so she told me she said, okay, he's going to start crowning. And I naturally just panted through it. check was out, and she said, okay, with the next contraction, I'm going to pass him through to you. And so that was just an amazing experience, being able to lift my baby out of the water and onto my chest. And yeah, it was so magical.
That's amazing. That sounds beautiful, magical.
Oh, honestly, it was the most dream birth. It was the dream birth that anyone could possibly ask for. And yeah, it was so nice just being able to have him in the comfort of my own home and be in my own space and have the kids there straight away. They came running in to meet him, and it was so nice. So again, postpartum.
And I feel like it also sounds healing, in the sense that you came from a medicalized, I guess, birth, with an induction, and with you, I guess you didn't have the epidural, but you got some pain relief. And then your second one, you've got the epidural, and then your third one, there's no interventions. There's literally, and that's not an intervention, but you've got one vaginal examination, and that's it. And the rest is just your body, you doing it. And to me, it almost sounds like it's healing, and it's giving you confidence that your body is able, you're capable. You don't need help. You just need to trust yourself, and just, as you said, be within and look within to then birth him.
Yeah, absolutely. It all comes down to really trusting your own intuition. And I just felt like, that whole 9 months, that's what I really worked on, was beginning to trust myself again and trust my body and trust my baby and trust the birthing process too. Had I needed to transfer, I would know at the right time that whatever I needed at that moment, I would be able to trust myself enough to ask for it. So yeah, with postpartum again,
right.
I didn't have any tears, which was nice.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
That perineum is just flexible as.
I know. I didn't even do anything to prepare it either. So
Well, there you go. Some women just don't prepare.
So far so good. But I did have like blood pooling. So because I was having like my nest time and wanting to just be resting as much as possible with this bub, instead of getting up 3 weeks later and going shopping and I don't know, all the things that you do after some people think they have to do after they have a baby, but really nurturing myself this time and just taking it slow. I found the blood, the postpartum blood would it would pool, and then when I would have a hot shower or something, it would gush out to the point I thought I was hemorrhaging, but I wasn't, thankfully. But that was something new. So I mean, I don't know if there's any other mum that experienced that, and it's obviously something harmless. It's just pooling in the back of your vagina, so nothing to be afraid of. But it is scary when you haven't had that before. But a quick little conversation with my mum, and she said, "Oh, I had that actually." So it comforted me, instantly.
Yeah, and it might be something genetic that both you and your mum have that leads to that. Who knows? And as you said, if you get it checked by a midwife and she goes, "Oh no, that's normal," then yeah.
Yeah. So we also did a beautiful thing with his placenta. Is we bought a mulberry tree and we planted his placenta in our backyard and said like a little prayer and like a nice ritual. It's very
that's beautiful.
Very, like a very spiritually connected
that's beautiful.
Pregnancy and postpartum.
Oh, amazing. Nice.
So then we decided to have another baby. So when he was 1, we decided to have another, except we thought, wow, he took 14 months to come through, so it might take some time. So we should just start trying now and see what happens.
Yeah, that's right.
My husband wasn't too sure about having a 4th. It was full on with the 3, but I was adamant. I was like, this next baby, I really, really, really want a girl. So I just know that this next baby's a girl. Psychic said to my mum that there'll be a girl joining the family, but not straight away. And when she had that reading, I wasn't ready to have a baby yet. So I'm ready now, so it must be time.
Mm-hmm.
So we went for it and we fell pregnant straight away. And in that short wait period, I remember
Oh,
asking
wow.
Spirit, I said, if I'm pregnant, send me a butterfly. And Spirit did, the universe did. There was a butterfly that really caught my attention. I mean, I know there's butterflies in the garden all the time, especially in the warmer months. But this butterfly was flying back and forth along the limestone wall until I went and sat over there and I sat down next to it. And it just sat there with me for like 10 minutes. So I was like, this is a sign. This is
That's amazing. That is just
And
amazing.
I have a photo of it. So
Definitely is a
yeah,
sign. Yes.
because I was like, I have to take a photo of this photo and explain it to show people like there was legit a butterfly there.
Oh, that's so
Yeah,
funny. Wow.
so I was still breastfeeding my third boy at that point. So, being pregnant, breastfeeding, that was very, very draining. Except I had another psychic mediumship reading booked at 5 weeks pregnant. Now, this wasn't to find out anything per se about the pregnancy or anything like that. It was more so because my dad has actually passed. He passed about, I think it's like 10 or so years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I really wanted to connect with him. It would be the first time I actually would connect to his spirit. So that was the motivation to book that reading. And I booked it before I was
Mm-hmm.
pregnant. So I thought, oh, okay, maybe she'll pick up on the gender. So she's got to be telling me it's going to be a girl because this is
Mm-hmm.
the same psychic that my mum saw. So, hey, let's go. Let's see what happens. So
I see.
I
Yeah.
get there, connect with my dad, and I'm 5 weeks pregnant. So she can't see that I'm pregnant. And she says, your dad's handing me a
Yeah.
baby. And I said, oh, okay, I'm 5 weeks pregnant. She started to well up with tears and she goes, it's like she's not looking at me, she's looking obviously at the vision she's having, and she said, it's a boy. And I immediately, my whole body just tightened, and I said, no. I said, I don't want a boy, and I didn't mean that in a horrible way. This was meant to be our last baby, complete the
Mm-mm-mm.
family. I already have a daughter, but she has a disability, and I really, really wanted that experience of having a little girl because I had two boys. I just really wanted to see, between me and my husband, what a girl would look like. And I had my heart set. It was so set that I just couldn't fathom.
Mm-hmm.
And I went into grief straight away. And I said, tell
Yeah.
the spirit, like tell dad that
Mm.
I want a girl. Send a girl. And she said, oh, look, I'll let them know you want a girl. But you don't always get what you want. And so I was like, okay. And I was strange after reading.
Well, that's right.
Yeah, I just felt like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. I just want to go home type thing. But through the reading also, she said there's something about a carer's card. I don't totally know what that means. It could be that, carer and money, you could be paying a babysitter or something for you and your husband to go out. So I thought, okay, this is really weird. All right
Mm-hmm.
then. And so I went home and a friend had actually already had a dream before I was pregnant that I was pregnant with a boy. And I said, well, let's hope I'm pregnant, but let's hope it's a girl. Let's hope that part's wrong. And so then when
Mm-hmm.
this psychic had said boy, I was like, oh, that's two people. I'm going to get like a third person, a beautiful midwife that also reads tarot. I contacted her and I thought, if she says that this baby's a boy, I'll accept it. I'll accept it. Um, so I contacted
Mm-hmm.
her and she said to me what no one wants to hear. She told me that baby is a boy
Mm.
and that I would miscarry. But this would miscarry and then a girl would come in later. So instantly I was like in grief. I didn't want to have a miscarriage at all. I didn't want to lose this baby. I just wanted a fairy tale of somehow getting what I wanted.
Mm.
But
Mm.
yeah, so I was so sad. And she said, you'll miss, like, it's looking like about 9 weeks. So, I was only 5 weeks at that point. So we waited 4 weeks. And then at 9 weeks, on the day I turned 9 weeks, I started to bleed. And I thought, it's happening. She said this would happen. I'm bleeding. This is what she said. This is the miscarriage now. And I kind of felt it was a really weird feeling. It was a bit of feeling of, okay, I'm going to get what I want now. But at the same time, I don't want to go through this. I do want this baby. It was never a question of did I want my baby or not, ever. But I think gender disappointment is so real, and I think it's very
Of course.
taboo, and I think a lot of mums and dads are
Mm.
ashamed to say these feelings because it makes people uncomfortable. But, people do feel this way. It doesn't mean they don't want a
Yeah,
healthy
of course.
baby.
You're
It
totally
doesn't
right.
mean that you wouldn't love a baby. It doesn't mean that you are not grateful or thankful for what you have. It's just part of being a human. You can experience feelings like this, and I don't think that it's right for anyone to say that you can't feel that way at some point.
You've put it the most perfect way. I couldn't have said that any better. That's exactly what it is. Gender disappointment is real. It's valid, and it's definitely not spoken about. And I'm really glad that you're saying it, because I'm sure other listeners will say, "Oh, actually, yes, I had the same with my second. I actually really wanted a girl, and I got a boy." And then when the baby is born, obviously they love their baby. You would love your child no matter, but you can still feel disappointed that you didn't get, the boy or the girl that you were hoping for. That is valid. That's right.
Absolutely. Um, I had it in my head that I was, I wanted this girl that would be all these different things that I would love in a girl. But again, I'll speak a bit more on that later. But um, I had a bit of bleeding, and then I thought I I'll just let my body miscarry. I didn't rush off to a hospital. It wasn't like I'd actually had a miscarriage before, and it wasn't like that. So I rested a bit. I called my mum. I called my husband home, and it ended up stopping. So I thought, okay, let's go get a scan because I didn't get any scans with my third child until the
Okay.
20-week scan, and that's it. So I had the same plan again, but we ended up going in. I think I was about 10 weeks, and there was baby alive and a great heartbeat and well. So I thought,
Wow.
okay, all right, we're doing this. Okay, maybe the spirit listened and the baby's all of a sudden a girl, and I still had this weird hang up. So, but I was so grateful. I was so grateful that the baby was alive. But the sonographer did note to me, she said, there's a little pocket of blood. So it's so small, maybe about a mil left to come out. So don't be surprised if, you have a little bit more bleeding, but all is well. So I was like, okay, this is amazing. Yay, I'm still pregnant. Um, to which I did have a little bit more bleeding a week later, which I didn't stay alarmed for because she did say that. And then I went for my 12-week scan, and baby was just so cute, so cute. I remember falling in love straight away, and I just thought, oh, I hope you're a girl still. I still had that in my head, and I was so attached. I was like, yes, you are so cute. I'm so excited. But yeah, I was still trying to convince myself at that point the baby was a girl. And then I went home. I was so excited. I got the kids all together in the backyard with the ultrasound photos, and I took a photo, and they all looked so cute. And that was going to be the birth, the pregnancy announcement. Um, but then something inside me said, "Don't post it on Facebook just yet. Just wait a week." So I thought that was weird. That was intuition telling me, "Don't say anything just yet." And then the next day, I completely hemorrhaged. It was a massive bleed. I rang them. I didn't know who to call because I was so early. I didn't have um, a private midwife. You don't normally book in till 4 months or so. I didn't have an obstetrician. I just had a GP. So I didn't really
Mhm.
have anyone I could just call.
Mhm.
So it was quite lonely and very, I didn't know who to call. So I rang them and I said, can I come in for another scan? I've just had this big bleed. They said, oh, not much usually changes since you just had like a scan yesterday. That's really strange. Called the doctor. He said, go straight to emergency. But the difference between that and my miscarriage was there was no cramping, there was no pain, there was no
Mhm.
clots, nothing. So I ended up going to the ER
Mhm.
and they were very hesitant to perform an ultrasound, which I really stood up for myself.
Mm.
And finally, the head doctor decided to do an ultrasound. Even though he didn't really know what he was looking for, I really begged and pleaded with him. I said, I will know if my baby's still alive. I know what the flicker of a heartbeat looks like. I know.
Mhm.
And because actually, sorry to backtrack a little bit, after that first 10-week ultrasound, when they send the report to the doctor had actually rang me and said you have a subchorionic hematoma, which is a bleed between the sac and the uterus. So it's like a bruise, and this
Mhm.
one was
Okay.
bleeding. Some women they get hemorrhaging, and some don't. Some
Yeah.
it absorbs into the body on its own and is not a problem. If there's bleeding or a bruise behind the
Yeah.
placenta, then that can cause issues like an abruption, and sometimes also it can actually pop the sac, which can lead to, an early birth, which, can have devastating results. So he basically said,
Yeah.
this one's a wait and watch. We don't know, but prepare. You could have a miscarriage because of this threatened pregnancy, basically.
Mhm.
So I back to the hospital.
Mhm.
They did a scan. I said, I'll know if, the bleed's bigger. I'll know. Um, and there was baby on the screen alive. And I'm not religious, but I just thank God that my baby was still okay. And I was praying the whole time, and baby was
Mhm.
fine. But they did a proper ultrasound the next day, and the subchorionic hematoma had actually doubled in size. So this was about 7 centimeters. It had gone from 3 to 7 centimeters.
Mm.
So it was considered, in relation to size of bub, large.
Wow.
So I
Mhm.
immediately
Mhm.
Googled
Of
everything
course.
of
Yeah.
how to help this, YouTubing people that have had this subchorionic hematoma, what did they do? A lot of people recommended things like vitamin E and vitamin K for clotting. So not necessarily vitamin K as in the vitamin, but lots of like kale and spinach and dietary like pomegranate juice and bed rest, even though
Mhm.
there was nothing statistically proven that bed rest would affect the outcome. I just was like, I need to do everything I possibly can to help my baby, stay
Yeah.
alive. So I popped myself on bed rest.
Yeah.
I begged my mum to help. She has quite a full on life, um, very busy woman, but she helped me so much. She came and looked after the kids for me. She looked after me when my husband wasn't home. And then when my
Nice.
husband was home, he took over the carer's role. So in hindsight,
Mhm.
um, interesting actually, sorry, I digress again. My mum actually saw that same psychic a few weeks later after I'd had that reading at 5 weeks. And she said, your daughter is going to need you. And
Mhm.
she said, no, no, my daughter's very independent. She's not going to need me. I said, no, no, it's
Mhm.
definitely your daughter.
Yeah.
And because I'd asked her not to tell my mum that I was pregnant because I wanted to surprise my mum myself. And so she couldn't tell her
Mhm.
anything more than that. And of course, then that came to fruition. I needed her. I really needed her help. And it wasn't without its stress,
Yeah.
very stressful, trying to look after so many
Yeah. Of
people.
course.
My husband trying to, come in work, then come home to look after everybody. It was emotionally draining. I was physically feeling
Yeah.
so sick. I couldn't walk to the toilet,
Of
which is
course.
not that far away, without feeling like I needed to sit down or faint. I was in so much pain when I would um, when I was
Hmm.
driving as well. It was very different. I was so sensitive. I felt it was very different to my other pregnancies. And so after that,
Hmm.
I had so many ultrasounds every week. I was at my obstetrician because I contacted an obstetrician, the same one I had with my daughter, my firstborn. And I thought, I know him, I'll just go with him. And he's one of the most recommended around Mandurah area. Um, so I went with him and
Hmm.
yeah, we would just check the hematoma and it never decreased in size. I did bleed more. I was using homeopathics. There's a beautiful lady down in Bunbury
Hmm.
that helped me through so much, and another local lady with using different types of homeopathic medicine to get me through not only the pain sometimes, but the bleeding to help stop the bleeding. Because
Hmm.
it's a very
Yeah.
it's it's very weird feeling when you're pregnant and you're bleeding a lot. Brings about a lot of fear and each
Of
time I would
course. Yeah, it
hemorrhage
does.
I'd have to get an ambulance to the hospital, which added to the trauma of not just bleeding, but I'd never had so much medical intervention in my whole life. I ended up staying in hospital with the last hemorrhage. I stayed for about a week, and at that point the obstetrician I had, he said, look, I'd like to get a second opinion of another obstetrician that I value. So I said, okay. And he was actually, I found him to be really rude.
Hmm.
Now, there's a lot of people that have said they love him, but I just felt like in my own personal experience with him, he was so rude to me. He basically said to me, we know where the bleeding's coming from. So
Hmm.
we know you don't have to come to emergency every time you come in here. So go home. If you bleed, you're bleeding. You don't need to come in, basically. So I was really shocked by that, and I thought, okay, maybe I'm being a drama queen here.
No.
Um, to which,
No, that's
yeah, and
shocking
the
bedside
hard thing
manners.
I don't know if it's just WA, I'm pretty sure it's Australia though. If you're under 20 weeks, you're not allowed into the birthing ward at all, um, with any complication.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that's
so
Australia wide. Yeah.
every time I'd have a hemorrhage and they'd have need to call him or whatever, I would be in emergency and then I'd be in the ward off emergency. They, I didn't get that the care that you get with midwives and the nurturing. There was
Hmm.
nothing, none of that. So that in itself is very traumatic
No.
when you have a complicated pregnancy that you don't know the outcome. Then after that,
Yeah.
I was at home and I had my 20-week scan coming up. So I wasn't quite 20, no, I wasn't quite 20 weeks yet, but I had the scan and the sonographer said, oh, it's a bit, it's not looking all that good in there. There's a lot of debris in there and I can't see this properly. And baby was alive and he
Hmm.
took a picture of it. He said, I'm not going to take a 4D one because there's just a lot in there that I'm not too sure about. And he said because I was in so much pain, he said, look, come back in a week and let me take another look. So I went home that night and that night I was in so
Hmm.
much pain and the pain wasn't coming from the hematoma side, which was on the right. It was coming from the left where my placenta was. And it was more like a stabbing pain. And because
Hmm.
that doctor said don't rush in, I didn't. So I had a very irritable uterus from the constant bleeding, and I just
Yeah.
stayed home. And somehow I was like, I've made it through the night of
Yeah.
having, I guess, what felt like contractions. I've made it through the night. My baby's still alive. And then it's at that point I started to feel like maybe I need to start facing the reality that I may lose this baby, that I'm holding on to this baby. I was terrified to ever have a conversation.
Hmm.
A friend suggested, why don't I talk to my baby and ask him if he wants to go, if he wants to go or if he wants to stay. And I said, I can't possibly because if he wants to go, I
Hmm.
can't fathom. him leaving me, I couldn't even possibly contemplate that conversation. And after so many
Mhm.
scans, I did actually find out I was having a boy. But at that point, from what I'd gone through, I just wanted him. I did not care that
Mhm.
he wasn't a girl. I wanted my beautiful baby. And yeah, I started thinking about maybe maybe I need to start thinking about that conversation again. And so I'd had a tarot reading booked on the Wednesday, and I just wanted to see what she thought. So um, I had the reading. She was a friend of mine too, so she said, "Oh, I don't know how to tell you. I don't know how to give you this." And I said, "Look, tell me the truth, but I am fragile, so go easy." And
Mhm.
she said to me, "Look, things aren't looking good. There's something threatening your pregnancy too. It's not really looking like a good outcome." But she didn't want to say, "Hey, this is the outcome." She wanted to still give me the opportunity
Mhm.
to make up my own mind. So I, I thought about
Mhm.
what she said, and we were having a conversation. I said, "Is there a girl waiting for me?" She said, "Yeah, but she's faint." And I said, "Okay." She said, "It's just going to take you a long time to heal from this experience." So I thought, okay, well, if I do have a girl waiting for me, then maybe deep down I knew that she meant that my baby wasn't going to survive from what she was saying in roundabout ways. So
Mhm.
I at that point I started to accept things a bit more. I
Mhm.
was in a deep depression from the 8 weeks of bed rest or more actually. I was forecasted to have 8 more weeks, and I thought I can't take it. My husband was out of leave. He would probably lose his job. We were running out of money, and nothing was aligning. There was
Mm.
blocks everywhere, and I just felt like it's time for me to have this conversation. So
Mhm.
I sat with it after the reading, and I said to him, I said, "If you're not going to stay like the other boys, like the other kids, then it's okay. It's okay for you to go. If you're not coming here to stay and be with me like the other kids, it's all right for you to go. I will be okay." Um, to which that evening I felt no more movement, and I truly felt like me finally. He only held on
Mhm.
as long as I held him there. He did that for me. And the beautiful blessing about that, I'll say, is
Mhm.
I knew he'd passed away. But at that point, when he passed at 20 weeks, which meant I could birth
Mhm.
at the hospital with the midwives. Any sooner than that, I'd be with nurses. For me, that was an absolute gift, an absolute blessing that he could give me. And at every time he was threatened, I would I would beg him just one more day, please just stay, as long as just stay with me. So when I finally released him, he did go, he did pass. I didn't find out until that I was due to have
Mhm.
that repeat ultrasound for the 20-week scan on the Friday. So the next day I did nothing about it. I just kept an eye on maybe would there
Mhm.
be movement, would there not be? And there was one movement, there was one dunk, which wasn't his pattern. I kind of thought, oh, there you are. But at the same time, I was so
Mhm.
depressed that I felt like now I have to keep going with this life. I don't know I couldn't fathom that. Um,
Mhm. Yeah.
so there was a little bit of relief in his passing, which sounds terrible, but again, explaining what I was going through, it was so hard on my body and
Mm.
so hard on my mind to completely lose my life looking after my children. I couldn't look after them. I couldn't look after myself. I couldn't pick them up. I couldn't really be with them. Um, the stress that it just impacted our family so much. I felt I couldn't go on another day. At the scan, by then I also had a midwife because we were planning a home birth if we could. So I had a midwife following me through. She was absolutely lovely. She also worked alongside the
Mhm.
obstetrician and at the same hospital. And she met me at the ultrasound place, and I said to her, "I have still not felt any movement. I really need you to go in and tell them to turn the large monitor off because I don't want to see anything. I don't want to see I didn't want to see my baby dead. It was just way too confronting.
Mhm.
I knew he wasn't there anymore.
Mhm.
So they were great. They did everything I requested, and
Yeah.
they popped the scanner on, and it wasn't on for very long. And that's when they told me. He said to me, and it's still, I can still remember his voice and his words. "I'm sorry, Hayley, but your baby has died." And it was just, I didn't know where to put myself. It was like a weird numb feeling. It was, it was such a strange feeling. I just felt like now I have to give birth. I'm not ready to give birth. I usually get 9 months to prepare. I'm giving birth to a baby that has passed. I
Mhm.
don't, at 20 weeks, what does that even look
Yeah.
like? Another induction, because the fears came up again for my first birth. So
Mhm.
my midwife rang my obstetrician and explained that he'd passed and we'd be coming to the hospital. My husband was picked up by a friend. I didn't tell him, not until we got to the hospital, till he came to the hospital and I met him there. We had spoken about a name, and I wanted to name him Rylee, but we hadn't spoken about a middle name. Uh, Now Rylee means
Mhm.
brave, but the middle name I had picked out was Phinneas, and Rylee Phinneas means brave oracle. And so for me, I felt like he
Mhm.
was my brave oracle guiding me throughout the pregnancy. So it was perfect. It just was so meaningful for me. And
Mhm.
so my midwife, we were at the hospital, and
Mhm.
I felt it really quite confronting. They got out these really small crocheted hats, which wouldn't fit a newborn baby at term. So that was very confronting to see, wow, that's how big my baby's head might be. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, And straight away they said, okay, we're going to induce you with the tablets. I said, I'm not ready. I can't do this. I need some time. To which they said, okay, well, you can go home and actually do this, say naturally, or
Mhm.
even take the pills at home. And I said, um, I don't want to, because I was so scared. I didn't know what Rylee was going to look like. I didn't want to be confronted with, um, that vision.
Mhm.
And I didn't know what to do. I needed the support. And
Mhm. Yeah.
so I just remember I did get brave to do it that night, but they said they don't do inductions at night time, you know, for short staff, if there was an issue, which was okay. But that
Mhm.
night I could hardly eat, drink. I kept going over and over and over with the midwife. She was so lovely. She sat with me for hours while
Mhm.
we kept trying to go through the process so I could try and get in the zone. Um, but I was just so worked up, so anxious, so hysterical. I did end up having some
Mhm.
diazepam, which did calm me down and put me to sleep because I needed my strength. I did. I needed some energy
Yeah.
for what I was going to have to do the next day. And
Mm.
um, So,
Of
6 o'clock, they said they were going to induce me. So I woke up 6 o'clock. I felt so sick because I was anxious. And my midwife ended up coming in, and she came in with salt lamps and, beautiful oils. And she made him a gorgeous little cord tie, and tried to make it as home birthy as what I could have had, because that's what I wanted. I wanted to put as much of how I would have birthed him had he been full term at home. I wanted to gift that to him. That was my way. Um, and
Yeah.
so I had the
Mhm.
tablets, and I started to get some little niggles. So I put the same meditation I had on with my home birth son. And I was so blissed out. I had no pain. And then it was time. I think it's every 4 hours they give you tablets till you've had your baby. And so I had another round, but my midwife had to leave and a new midwife
Mhm.
came in. And she was lovely. It turned out, we found out later that she'd actually had a third trimester loss. And so she fully knew, she resonated with what we were going through. And
Mhm.
so, yeah,
Mhm.
I had the second round, and that's when contractions, they just ramped up. They ramped up. and I breathed through them, and I envisioned having, the lights off, the dark, like a physiological birth, the way you'd want it in the cave type thing. But I found, having had done all that work with my home birth, I was able to birth anywhere. I completely went inside myself. I spoke to him, not out loud, but I spoke to him in my mind, and I said to him, I'm ready to release you now. It's okay. And I was telling my cervix to open, and I just really breathed through each contraction. I was not opposed to pain relief, but I really wanted to do it naturally. But at the same time, if I needed the morphine, which they offered me, they had that there ready. They had a gas tank beside me if I needed it. So what happened is I remember all the lights being on. Bluey was on TV, which was a comfort because my kids love Bluey, and it kind of felt like they were there then. But it was an episode called Early Baby. So I don't know, it was a bit fitting. But interesting, through my birth with Rylee, a song was playing in my mind, and that is the song Blackbird by the Beatles, but I actually like James Smith's version, and it's in Boss Baby. I don't know if you've seen that movie. Yeah, so at the very beginning when they're
Yes, I have.
singing
Yep.
the song, Blackbird singing in the dead of yeah, so that just kept coming to me, and I felt like that was his song, and that's kept, kept going over in my mind. And so the first part of my birth was I had to birth the hematoma. That's what came out first. And we did not want to look. We didn't want to see Rylee straight away in our birth plan. He was to be taken out of the room until we were ready to meet him, because we were scared. We were so scared, me and my husband. And so I birthed the hematoma, but because I had my eyes closed, I thought it was him. So I was like saying, "Oh, hello, darling. Hello, baby. Hi. You're here." But my midwife was like, "Oh no, this is the clot." And then we were laughing and saying, "Oh, that's the evil twin." Um, so then she took care of that. But then the contractions, they ramped up again, and then they were getting stronger. And then the second part of that birth was birthing. What they'd found at that ultrasound is a large part of my placenta had torn off from the bleed. So I was birthing that first bit of placenta that had torn off. So I birthed that out, and then things ramped up again. And I remember feeling really hot, and I did have side effects from the medication, which was unfortunately diarrhea. But dignity goes out the door. These midwives, they're there to care and nurture and support you through a birth. So I just surrendered to that fact. They cleaned it up whenever they needed to.
Of course.
And I could feel him drop down, and then I said, "This is him." But I was birthing on my back, which I didn't want to do, but I just really was afraid that no one knew that maneuver, that my home birth midwife knew about pushing on my back. So I didn't want to be without that. So I had a heat pack on that part of my back, and I was pushing against the bed, which obviously that created so much tension in my body, which I didn't know at the time. But I had to lift my bottom up a little bit so he wouldn't get stuck on the bed coming out. To which she said, "Yes, this is baby," and she took him out, and I just remember the umbilical cord was so small hanging between my legs, and I wasn't upset though. I did not grieve through the birth. I did not feel distraught. I felt very high on my hormones because I'd had no pain relief. I felt so high on the afterbirth hormones. I was like, wow, I did it. I've given birth pain relief free. Again, I've done this. I've given him that experience that I wanted to. Like we've done it. We've had our baby also. It's over. I've done that part that I was so scared of. I've done it. I was so proud, and I just wanted to announce to my family and friends, he's here. Like he's here. I've had him. And I think because spiritually we were so connected, I had that aspect too, which kind of blocked those human feelings of grief for a while. So I was in a really, really good place. I rang my best friend and I
Yeah.
said, I've had him, and she was crying. She was bawling her eyes out. She said, how are you so together? You sound so okay. I said, I am okay because this was always meant to be. This was always forecasted that this would happen. It's okay. I'm okay now. We can start to heal and close this chapter. But when we met him, I was okay. He was in this little basket. He had this beautiful blue
Mm-hmm.
crocheted hat on, and he looked so much like my eldest son. And I was too scared to look at his body because the skin is still translucent. You
Mm-hmm.
can see the organs. That was a bit confronting for me. But his little hands and his little feet
Mm-hmm.
were so cute. And my husband, he just
Mm-hmm.
bawled his eyes out. And I was sitting there saying, it's okay, this is fine, he's okay. And because I think, I don't know, maybe I needed to dissociate my mind. The way my mind worked is it just completely was like out of my body then. And it's like, this is such a painful and traumatic experience, this whole 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow a protective mechanism kicked in, and I, my mind did what it had to do at the time to get through. So after that,
Mm-hmm.
I was really afraid that I'd have retained placenta because I was starting to worry. I was starting to have other friends' stories come into my mind. A friend had retained placenta. A friend had some sort of a prolapse. Well, I ended up with a bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they
Yeah.
they kept us in
Wow.
the night, and then the next morning I was going to meet him again. I wanted to meet him because I didn't want him to feel like I didn't love him. And it's the same as when you have a live baby. That protective mother instinct,
Mm-hmm.
except you want to hold your baby. You don't want anyone to hold your baby. That still kicks in, except my baby, I had to give
Mm-hmm.
to other people because my baby had to be in a fridge. And it was really hard to comprehend at the time. But they were so lovely. They would bring him in this little basket, and
Yeah.
I completely, the next day, I was like, I don't know if I can see him again. I feel bad if I don't, but I feel all that drop of hormones from having no placenta, it all, the whole drop, the whole reality of what I'd done. Yes, I just birthed my baby, but my baby died. Like
Yeah.
it was starting to come into my reality a bit more, and I was afraid to see him, but we saw him anyway. And the beautiful feeling of when he was actually in our presence, he, it was such a calm feeling. There was no fear. It wasn't scary to look at him. And that's what the midwife said. She said, when you see him, you'll recognize him as
Mm-hmm.
your own. You'll recognize him as your baby. And that's exactly how I felt. It wasn't scary. He was my baby. Um,
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up, yeah, I went home that evening. They
Mm-hmm.
wanted to keep me in a bit longer, but I didn't want my husband going home without me. I felt like we were just really needed each other. Um, so we all went home as a family with the other kids, and we explained to them what had
Mm-hmm.
happened, you know, in a way they could understand. And yeah, they took pictures
Yeah.
of him for us and did his little handprints and his footprints, and so we got some beautiful keepsakes. And then he was sent off to King Eddie's to be cremated. So when I got home, I had some retained placenta,
Mm-hmm.
and I did have the anterior wall of my vagina come down a little bit. So what you would call, I guess, a prolapse, to which I hadn't had
Mm-hmm.
before. So I was completely
Mm-hmm.
devastated. Getting on Facebook groups for support. Well, there's a lot of horror stories out there, so that I ended up getting out of those. I did see a physio into which it actually
Yeah.
went back up into place 2 weeks later. So I sat down with myself and I said, if I've manifested this by being so scared of it,
Oh,
and then I
wow.
brought it into my reality, because I'm a big believer of manifestation, I can manifest the healing of it. So I put everything into healing it and just believing that it'll be fine. And a physio and a gynecologist have confirmed it's all intact again. So I'm so grateful for that.
What an incredible story you've just told, and thank you so much for sharing the whole birth of Rylee. I think that's really valuable to have your testimonial out there and your experience and how you felt and what it was like, because stillbirth do happen for any reasons. They can happen just like a miscarriage can happen in the first trimester. You can have a second trimester or third trimester loss, and sometimes it can't even be explained why. But when we spoke of the recording, I one question I really wanted to ask you, and I know this is personal, and your answer will be different to maybe someone else who's also had a second trimester loss, but you actually mentioned it. You said when you called your best friend and you were ecstatic that you birthed Rylee, because obviously it's a birth. It's you've brought a new child into this world. You did it. You didn't have any pain relief. You obviously felt ecstatic. That's understandable. And your best friend's reaction is to feel sadness and grief for you. How did you want people to, I guess, react to Rylee's birth? Because it sounded like you wanted the positive to come out of this, to say, yes, Rylee is born, Rylee has been birthed. Whereas it sounded like your maybe friends and maybe families were obviously grieving the fact that your baby had passed.
Yeah, look, for me, once I got home and settled into my postpartum stage, I felt like it was really important for people to celebrate his life and celebrate that I was a postpartum mum, whether my baby was living or not, I was still a mum. I'd still given birth, and I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be treated how I was treated when I had my other babies. So for me, I wanted people to bring me flowers. I wanted people to come
Mm-hmm.
and, send me a card, send me some sort of little package, come and visit me so I can tell you the story. But I did find people are funny
Mm-hmm.
about death, especially when you lose a baby. I think people don't know how to react. They don't know if
Yeah.
they don't want to upset you, even though you're going to be upset regardless whether someone brings up your baby or not. You're still going to be upset. And
Yeah.
quite often, I've found, especially my own lived
Mm-hmm.
experience, is that I wanted to talk about my baby. I wanted people to mention him. I didn't want him to be this taboo subject that was swept under the carpet
Mm-hmm.
like he never existed. I wanted to be able to still have
Yeah.
those conversations. So I felt like I had to really advocate for myself, or I did tell my husband too. I said, tell people to send me the flowers. I asked people to
Yeah.
visit me. And I think that's really important too. I think a lot of people don't know what to do, so they either don't do anything, which is just as bad. It feels just as bad. You feel abandoned and like they don't care.
Yeah.
Um, So I
Yeah.
really encourage, if you have a friend or someone that has had a loss of any type, as hard as it may be, ask them what they need. Ask them, how can I support you? And and do it. Whatever they need. If they need, a cup of coffee together, like just that's what they need at the time, then that's how you can support them. If they don't want to see anybody, then that's fine too. That's how you can support them. But I think it's having that bravery to ask the griever, but also for the griever,
Mm-hmm.
I think, to ask for what they need too, because people aren't mind readers, and I think that's where that communication barrier
Yeah.
can come in, because you don't want to say the wrong thing, you don't want to get it wrong, you don't want to, you know, upset the person. Um, so I think it's better to just bite the bullet and ask.
Yeah. And I think that's the way you've put it is really beautiful, and it's a very valuable piece of advice for anyone who's wondering, how can I support my best friend, my friend, someone I know who's had a loss, as you said, of any sort at any point in their pregnancy, because that's right, we tend to, and I think, it's also beliefs that have come from, generations before us where, if you've had a miscarriage or you've had a loss, you just don't talk about it. You just sweep it under the carpet, you forget. And it seemed to have been the way to go, way back when. Whereas now, and to heal, I think it's also important to talk about this baby, talk about Rylee, and mention him, because he is part of your family. He is your fourth child. And he, you birthed him. He is there. So yeah, it's extremely beautiful. And again, thank you so much for sharing this, because I'm sure it's not easy to share this and to go as deep as you have been. I really value and appreciate the trust that you've put into me to allow me
Thank
to
you. I
share
really
this story.
appreciate being able to share his story too, because I've not actually really shared it with a lot of people, and I think um, I do really want to share it because it has so many layers. Um, it's hard to write. It's so I think being able to share it um,
Mhm.
with people who may need it, who could take something from it. Um, you know, in my postpartum, there was a beautiful lady in town here. She
Yeah.
actually organised me a meal train because I was quite unwell and my husband had to go back to work. And there were people I didn't know, but they would come to my
Oh,
house and they
amazing.
dropped off meals. She would come in and clean my
Mhm.
house. Um, and just having that kind of support, whether you have your baby that is alive and at home, or if you're in grief, having that kind of support is invaluable. Um,
Yeah.
the kindness, the care, it was from a woman, you know, that I didn't know that well as well. So if
Yeah.
you know someone having a baby or a friend is, even just meal trains, they're amazing. And they help so much.
Yes, that's right. Because nutrition, nourishing your body is everything in the postpartum period. You need nutrients to heal from birth. You need nutrients to, establish breastfeeding, to recover. You just need
Yeah,
nutritious food.
absolutely.
So yes, it's essential. And so, how are you feeling today? So, how long ago
So
was
I had
Riley's
Rylee
passing now?
on the 21st of August last year, 2021. And
Hmm.
yeah, we had a memorial on his birthday. I had a cake, some beautiful friends come over because my husband was away. Um, and it was sad. I didn't know how to put things into words again, but yeah, it's nice just to be able to do something for him. These are the only things that I can give him. So, and it helps my other children too process the loss. It helps us process it. We still have his placenta actually, which we're planning to plant
Yeah,
soon. So I think that will be another part of the healing
of
process for
course.
me and my family. And
That sounds
as I've
beautiful.
mentioned throughout this whole episode, you know, I'm quite a spiritual person, and I have connected with Riley's spirit since having him through a psychic who said that he was very excited to come through again. He would love to, you know, have a second go, I guess, next year. Um, but he did say if we were too traumatized, then he would come through as my eldest son's baby. So I would get to have the grandmother experience with him. Um, I think we
Okay.
will have another child. But I did have another reading
Okay.
yesterday, a fertility reading through a psychic on Instagram called Ground of Goddess, so Vanessa from there. And I wanted to see if her reading would tie in with the reading I had a couple of months ago. And it did. So she said to me that she sees me falling
Mm-hmm.
pregnant the second half of this year, being completely no complications, everything's fine. And so having a
Uh-huh.
2024 baby, she said that the essence of Riley's, the his spirit will be part of this child.
Mm-hmm.
This child will be a girl. So again, it ties in with what many all the psychics are saying a girl would come through. So, you know, again, obviously I'm happy about that. You still have to take these things with a grain of salt, of course. But she did say that I would be having a cesarean, not because there was a complication though, just because um, that would be the way things would unfold, but it'd be scheduled. She said there's no fear around it. It's how this baby would like to come. So she said remain open with that. We can have another session when you're pregnant, she reckons. So it will be so interesting to just see, you know, if that comes to fruition, I think.
Yeah, it will be. Wow. So are you ready, I
So
guess,
we've been
to
thinking
start
about it for a
thinking
little
about
while,
having
but I
another
think
child?
we're still unpacking a bit of grief and fear around that. And I think part of having, you know, that spiritual aspect of getting intel from spirit from a psychic, it kind of gives you, rather than anchoring to a past traumatic experience, it gives you that faith and that hope that you can still have a beautiful experience after a devastating experience. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen again. And if it does happen again, then, you know, there might be some things to look
Yeah.
at there, or something's trying to teach you
Yeah.
something. I think perspective is absolutely everything. And I've found having that spiritual faith, I'm not religious, but even if you are, that spiritual faith in that there's something greater than you taking care of you, that life is happening for you and not to you, it just helps that death is not the final piece. When, you know, when devastating things happen, there is more.
Mhm.
So that's been, yeah, healing for me to have that kind of faith.
Yeah. And yeah, that's beautiful. I do hope that, you know, this comes to life, I guess. No pun intended. That this you know, becomes a reality and you do fall pregnant in, you know, mid this year.
Yeah.
That would be amazing. Yeah, wow. And then you can come
Oh,
back
yeah,
and tell me the
absolutely.
story of baby 5.
Yeah.
Baby 5 being a girl, obviously.
Yes, that would be amazing. I mean, I would, if I could choose still, I would have a girl, but at the same time, I feel like I've released so much pressure to have a girl. If we did have a boy, I'm not sad because I just feel like all those times I wanted a girl were for very wrong reasons, and you can still have a girl and then they turn out to be not what like you planned. So personality wise,
Mhm.
everything, I think, you know, we don't have control. Things just happen and
Yeah,
sometimes it's better than you expected. So
that's right. That's right. Yeah, just let nature do its thing
absolutely.
and
Surrender,
then
trust the
go with
process.
it, I guess. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Hayley. It's your full birth, and I'm so glad we covered them all because they're all as important. You know, each of them is very important.
Thank you so much for having me and thanks for giving me the opportunity to share all my stories.
Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to get notified of when a new episode comes out, please subscribe to this show on your podcast listening platform. Also, I would really appreciate it if you could leave me a review on Apple Podcast or share this episode so that other mom can find it. If you would like to tell your own pregnancy, birth, or parenting story, please head to the show notes and you will find a form there to get in touch with me. Again, thank you so much for listening, and I will be with you again next week for a new episode.